Cole had been talking to his maintenance drones again. He knew it was strange. He knew the little machines did not understand him. But after 14 months on Prime with nobody else to talk to, a man had to do something to stay sane. "You see, Wrench," he said to the floating repair drone as he tightened a bolt deep inside the coolant system. "The problem with being the only human on a station full of aliens is that nobody gets your jokes. I told the cook that his soup tasted like victory, and he spent 3 hours trying to figure out what victory tastes like on Earth." The drone beeped. It meant nothing, chose to believe it was laughing. Prime was a massive space station that hung in the darkness between 3 solar systems. Dozens of alien species passed through its halls every day. They came to trade, to refuel their ships, to conduct the endless business of a galaxy that had been connected for thousands of years. And then there were the humans, who had only discovered faster-than-light travel a century ago. Most aliens looked at humans the way a professor might look at a child who had wandered into a university lecture. Curious, slightly annoyed, waiting for them to leave. Had been assigned to Prime as chief engineer. It sounded impressive until you realized it meant he was the one who crawled through pipes and fixed things when they broke. The collective, the governing body of the station, considered it a fitting job for a human, clever enough to be useful, not important enough to matter. He did not mind the work, was good at fixing things. He could look at a broken machine and somehow understand what it needed, even if he had never seen that type of machine before. The aliens called it luck, called it instinct. Either way, the station ran better since he arrived, and that had to count for something. What he minded was the loneliness. 18 hours. He had been working for 18 hours straight because the main coolant line had decided to crack in 3 places at once. His hands were covered in chemical burns. His back ached. His eyes felt like someone had filled them with sand. When he finally crawled out of the maintenance shaft and collapsed into his chair, he wanted nothing more than to sleep for a week. His tablet pinged, a message. Groaned and picked it up. The sender was Sub-Commander, the station's commanding officer, his boss. The message was short and formal, requesting his monthly efficiency report. He stared at the screen. Something inside him, some tired and slightly crazy part of his brain, decided it had enough. Sub-Commander was. Her species looked like someone had taken a lizard, stretched it to 7 feet tall, and covered it in scales that shimmered between silver and blue. They had been traveling the stars when humans were still figuring out fire. They were smart, powerful, and completely without emotion. At least, that was how they acted. In 14 months had never seen smile, frown, or show any expression at all. She ran the station like a machine running a program, perfect and cold. She also terrified him. But right now, at the end of 18 hours of crawling through pipes, was too tired to be scared. He started typing. Efficiency holding at 97.3%. Reactor cores purring like kittens. Also, Sub-Commander, I have calculated that you have walked past my hangar 847 times this cycle and looked directly at me 0 times. I am starting to think you are intimidated by my rugged good looks and devastating charm. Please advise. His finger hit send before his brain could stop it. For a moment, nothing happened. Sat there, staring at his tablet, watching the message status change from sending to sent to delivered. Then the reality of what he had done crashed into him like a shuttle hitting an asteroid. He had just sent a flirting joke to his boss. His alien boss. His alien boss who belonged to a species that considered emotions to be a weakness, and who could probably have him fired, deported, or thrown out an airlock with a single command. "Oh no," he whispered. "Oh no, no, no." He started typing an apology, deleted it, started again, deleted that too. What could he possibly say? "Sorry, Sub-Commander, I temporarily lost my mind due to exhaustion. Please ignore the part where I suggested you were attracted to me. It will never happen again because I will be hiding in a cargo container until I die." The minutes passed like hours. checked his tablet every few seconds, waiting for the response that would end his career. 1 minute, 2 minutes, three. Maybe she had not read it yet. Maybe her translator had glitched and turned his words into something innocent. Maybe. His hangar door chimed. Froze. Nobody visited his hangar. In 14 months, not a single person had come to his door for anything other than official business. He looked at the security screen and felt his stomach drop through the floor. Sub-Commander stood outside, 7 feet of silver-blue scales and unreadable reptilian eyes. She was looking directly at the camera, which meant she was looking directly at him. 6 minutes. It had taken her 6 minutes to walk from the command center to his hangar. That meant she had left immediately after reading his message. That meant she had not even stopped to think about what she was doing. That meant. The door chimed again. Considered his options. He could hide. He could pretend he was not there. He could climb back into the maintenance shaft and live in the pipes forever like some kind of engineering goblin. He opened the door. Stood there, tall and still and impossible to read. Her scales caught the light and scattered it into tiny rainbows. Her eyes, gold with vertical black slits, fixed on him with an intensity that made his skin prickle. She did not speak. She did not move. She just stared at him as if he were a puzzle she could not solve. Opened his mouth to apologize, to beg for forgiveness, to say something that might save his job and possibly his life. But the words would not come. His brain had apparently decided that if he was going to die, it would happen in awkward silence. The moment stretched on. Somewhere in the station, a machine hummed. Someone walked past at the end of the corridor, saw them, and quickly walked in the other direction. Finally spoke. Her voice was cold and precise, every word measured like a scientist recording data. What, she said, is a kitten. Blinked. Of all the things he had expected her to say, that was not one of them. A kitten, he repeated, his voice coming out higher than he intended. Tilted her head slightly. The movement was small, almost mechanical, but somehow it made her seem more curious than threatening. You stated that the reactor cores were purring like kittens. I do not understand this comparison. My translator provides no useful context. What is a kitten, and why does it purr? She stepped past him into the hangar without waiting for an invitation. Her clawed feet clicked against the metal floor as she walked, examining his workspace with the same intensity she probably used to review battle reports. Watched her stop in front of his small collection of personal items. Photographs of Earth, printed on real paper because he was old-fashioned. A coffee maker he had built from 3 different alien machines, because nobody in the galaxy seemed to understand the importance of caffeine. A hand-painted sign that read, "Home Sweet Hangar," in crooked letters. "These are your possessions," said. It was not a question. Yes, Sub-Commander. They are inefficient. The photographs serve no functional purpose. The sign contains inaccurate information as this is a hangar, not a home. She paused. Why do you keep them? Was starting to realize that he was not about to be fired. He was being interrogated, but not in a bad way. More like a scientist studying a new species, which, he supposed, was exactly what was happening. They make me feel better, he said. They remind me of home, of people I care about. Turned to look at him. Her golden eyes were impossible to read. Feel better, she repeated, as if the words were from a language she did not speak. Explain. So explained. He told her about cats, those small furry predators that humans had decided to invite into their homes thousands of years ago. He showed her pictures on his tablet, images of cats sleeping in sunbeams and chasing toys and curled up on their owners' laps. He tried to describe the sound of purring, that low rumble that meant contentment and comfort. Humans keep predators in their homes, said slowly, because the sound they make reduces negative emotional states. Well, when you put it like that, it sounds strange. It is strange. She studied the pictures for a long moment. Do not have equivalent creatures. We do not have companionship, as you describe it." There was something in her voice when she said that word, something almost like hunger, quickly buried under layers of cold control. Might have imagined it, but he did not think so. "That sounds lonely," he said before he could stop himself. Scales shifted color just slightly from silver blue to something darker. "Do not experience loneliness. It is an inefficient emotion." Then she left. No goodbye, no acknowledgement of his message, no explanation for why she had come. She simply walked out the door and disappeared down the corridor, leaving standing in his hangar wondering what had just happened. He did not have to wonder for long. Over the next few weeks, began finding reasons to visit. The first time, it was an engineering consultation. The atmospheric processors were running slightly below optimal efficiency, and she wanted his analysis. Gave her a detailed report. She stayed an extra 20 minutes asking about human respiratory preferences. The second time, it was an equipment inspection. She examined every tool in his hangar, asked about the function of each one, and somehow ended up listening to him explain the history of the screwdriver for half an hour. The third time, she did not even bother with an excuse. She simply arrived, sat down on a storage crate, and asked him to explain human music. The other species on the station noticed. Of course they noticed. Sub-Commander, the coldest any of them had ever met, was spending hours in the human's hangar. Whispers spread through the corridors like fire through dry grass. Heard fragments of conversations that stopped when he approached. Saw the sideways glances and the confused expressions. He did not care. For the first time in 14 months, someone was talking to him. Someone wanted to understand him. The fact that she was a 7-foot reptilian alien who showed less emotion than his maintenance drones somehow did not matter. Asked endless questions. Why did humans smile? What was the purpose of laughter? Why did they form attachments to places and objects and other beings? Answered as best he could, and with each answer, he saw something shift behind her golden eyes. She was not just curious. She was desperate for something she could not name. He started to understand. Society was built on control. They did not suppress their emotions because they did not have them. They suppressed their emotions because they were taught from the moment they hatched that feeling was weakness. Had spent 300 years being perfect, 300 years being cold, 300 years being alone in a way that, with his 14 months of isolation, could barely comprehend. His stupid, tired, impulsive message had cracked something open in her, and now she did not know how to close it again. Then the delegation arrived. The High Command sent a group to review Prime's operations. It was supposed to be routine. It was not. At the center of the delegation was First Commander, an ancient whose scales had faded to dull gray with age. He was superior, and from the moment he stepped onto the station, could feel something wrong. Looked at everything with contempt. The other species, the station's design, the way ran her command. But most of all he looked at. Changed when the delegation arrived. She stopped visiting the hangar. She stopped asking questions. When saw her in the corridors, she looked past him as if he did not exist. The walls were going back up, brick by brick, and there was nothing he could do about it. During the review, First Commander insisted on touring every section of the station. When he reached his hangar, he stopped and studied the human with cold, measuring eyes. "So this is the creature," said. His voice was like ice cracking. "The one our sub-commander has been spending so much time with." Straightened his spine. "Chief Engineer Cole, sir. I maintain the station's primary systems." Made a sound that might have been a laugh if it had any warmth in it. He turned to, who stood rigidly at attention beside him. "I see why you have grown distracted, Sub-Commander," he said in. The translator in his ear rendered the words with clinical precision. "The vermin is almost quaint." For 1 second something happened that had never seen before. Scales flushed darker, spreading from her neck to her face in a wave of color that could not be hidden. It lasted only a moment. Then the cold mask snapped back into place. But had seen it. His gray eyes narrowed and a thin smile crossed his ancient face. "How interesting," he said softly. "How very, very interesting." He walked away and felt a chill run down his spine that had nothing to do with the station's temperature. Whatever was coming, it was not going to be good. The review continued for 3 more days. First Commander examined every report, questioned every decision, and found fault with everything had done. It did not matter that the station was running better than it had in years. It did not matter that efficiency ratings were at record highs. Was not looking for problems with the station. He was looking for problems with. Watched from a distance, unable to help, unable to do anything except work his shifts and pretend everything was normal. Avoided him completely now. When they passed in corridors, her eyes slid past him like he was invisible. It hurt more than he expected. On the 4th day, everything changed. Was in the lower maintenance bay when he heard the explosion. The sound was distant but unmistakable, a deep boom that shook the floor beneath his feet. Then the alarm started, filling the air with screaming red light and the endless wail of emergency sirens. He ran. The corridors were chaos. Crew members of a dozen species rushed in every direction, some heading toward emergency stations, others fleeing toward the central hub. Pushed through them, following the damage reports on his tablet, his engineer's instincts pulling him toward the source of the problem. The outer ring. A cargo vessel had, its navigation systems failing at the worst possible moment. It had slammed into the station's exterior with enough force to tear open 3 sections. Hull breach, atmosphere venting into space, and 17 people trapped in a sealed section with life support failing. Reached the emergency command center to find organized panic. Officers shouted coordinates. Screens displayed damage reports in harsh red text. At the center of it all stood, her face a mask of cold control as she directed the response. Rescue probability calculated at 47%, a officer reported. Below acceptable threshold. Protocol dictates sealing the section and accepting losses. There are 3 diplomats in that section, another officer added. Their deaths would cause significant political complications. Stood in the corner watching with cold interest. He said nothing. He did not need to. The math was clear. Collective protocol was clear. The rescue was too dangerous, the chance of success too low. 17 people would die because a number on a screen said saving them was not worth the risk. Felt something hot and sharp rise in his chest. He had heard about collective protocol, the cold calculation that decided who lived and who died based on percentages and acceptable losses. He had always known, in theory, that this was how things worked out here. But standing in this room, watching officers calmly discuss letting 17 people suffocate because the math did not work out, something inside him snapped. "To hell with that," he said. The room went quiet. Every eye turned to him, even looked at him directly for the first time in days. "The rescue shuttle cannot navigate the debris field," an officer said slowly, as if explaining to a child. "The risk to additional personnel is too high. Protocol is clear." "Then I will not use the shuttle." Was already moving, grabbing equipment, running calculations in his head. "I will use a maintenance pod, manual navigation. I can fit through gaps the shuttle cannot." "A maintenance pod has no life support for passengers." "Then I will make multiple trips." "The math." "The math is wrong." Spun to face them, and something in his expression made the officers step back. "You are calculating based on what your machines can do. I am human. We do not work like your machines. We do things that should not be possible because we refuse to accept that they are impossible. Those 17 people are going to live because I am going to save them. And if anyone tries to stop me, they can explain to the families why a number on a screen was more important than their children." He did not wait for permission. He ran. The maintenance pod was never designed for rescue operations. It was a small, ugly craft meant for external repairs, barely large enough for one person and some tools. Squeezed inside, sealed the hatch, and launched into the debris field before anyone could order him to stop. The next 20 minutes were the longest of his life. The debris field was a nightmare of twisted metal and shattered hull plating. Chunks of the cargo vessel tumbled through the darkness, any one of them capable of crushing his tiny pod. Flew by instinct, trusting his gut when his instruments could not keep up. He dodged, weaved, and squeezed through gaps that should have been too small. He reached the sealed section and found the door jammed. The hull around it was buckled, damaged beyond repair. The people inside were running out of air. Pulled out his plasma torch. The tool was meant for cutting through metal plates during repairs. It was not meant to be held by bare hands for extended periods. The heat would cause burns, serious burns. He did it anyway. The metal screamed as he cut. The heat seared through his gloves, then through his skin. He kept cutting. Sweat poured down his face. His vision blurred. He kept cutting. His hands stopped hurting, which meant the nerves were dying, which meant he was running out of time. He kept cutting. The door fell away. Inside, 17 faces stared at him with expressions ranging from shock to disbelief. Among them were the 3 diplomats, their scales pale with oxygen deprivation. "Everyone into the pod," said. His voice sounded strange, distant. "It will be tight. We will make it work." They made it work. 3 trips through the debris field, each one harder than the last as his hands swelled and his vision narrowed. But he got them out. All 17, including the diplomats. When the last survivor was safely inside the station, collapsed. The world went gray, then black. The last thing he heard before unconsciousness took him was someone shouting his name. He woke in the medical bay to white lights and the soft beep of monitoring equipment. His hands were wrapped in thick bandages. His whole body felt like it had been beaten with hammers. Someone was standing beside his bed. Turned his head and found looking down at him. She had been there for 6 hours, a nurse told him later. 6 hours without moving, without speaking, just standing and watching. Her expression was strange, tight, almost pained, as if something inside her was fighting to get out. "That was foolish," she said. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Reckless, statistically unlikely to succeed. You could have died." "But I didn't," managed, "and neither did they." Was quiet for a long moment. Then slowly, she reached out and touched his bandaged hand. Her scales were cool against his feverish skin. The touch lasted only a second before she pulled back. "No," she said softly, "you did not." She left before he could respond, but something had changed, could feel it, something important. The political fallout came quickly. First Commander was furious. The rescue had violated 12 protocols, had endangered collective property, which technically included himself, demanded that the human be removed from the station and for reckless behavior. Stood before the assembled command staff and spoke in a voice colder than had ever heard from her. "Engineer Cole will remain under my authority. Any attempt to remove him will be treated as an insult to my command." His gray eyes narrowed. His thin lips stretched into something that was not quite a smile. "You have chosen your hill, Sub-Commander," he said quietly. "You will die on it." The threat hung in the air like poison, but did not flinch. She met his gaze with golden eyes that held no fear, only determination. For the first time, understood what she was risking for him. And for the first time, he began to realize what that might mean. The days after the rescue were tense. First Commander had not left the station. Instead, he had begun what he called a formal inquiry into his judgment. Other on the station received quiet orders to watch her, to document her irregularities, to report anything that might prove she had become compromised. Knew this because told him. She had started visiting his hangar again, late at night when the corridors were empty and prying eyes were elsewhere. She sat on the same storage crate as before, her silver-blue scales catching the dim light, and talked. "He wants to destroy me," she said one night. Her voice was calm, factual, as if she were discussing weather patterns instead of her own execution. "Not just remove me from command. He wants to break me, make me an example of what happens when a forgets what she is supposed to be." Was sitting across from her, a chess board between them. He had been teaching her the game, and she was terrible at it. Strategy was all about long-term planning, calculating every possibility dozens of moves in advance. Chess rewarded intuition and sacrifice, things that did not come naturally to her. "Why does he hate you so much?" asked. Moved a piece. The wrong piece did not correct her. "I do not know if hate is the right word. Do not hate, but I represent something he fears. I have risen too quickly, commanded too successfully. In a society that values control, those who excel become threats." She paused. "And now I have shown weakness. He will use it. Talking to me is weakness. Feeling something for you is weakness." She said it simply, without emphasis, but the words hit like a physical blow. "Among my people, attachment is the greatest failure. It clouds judgment. It leads to irrational decisions. What I have done for you, defying, protecting you from removal, these are not the actions of a proper commander. They are the actions of someone who has been compromised." The silence stretched between them. Outside the hangar, the station hummed with the endless sounds of life support and distant machinery. "Do you regret it?" asked quietly. Looked at him. Her golden eyes, usually so unreadable, held something he had never seen before. Uncertainty, fear, hope. "I should," she said. "Every instinct, every lesson I have ever learned tells me I should regret it, but I do not. I have lived for 300 years, I have commanded fleets. I have made decisions that shape the fate of worlds, and in all that time I cannot remember the last time I felt anything at all." Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. "Until you sent me that ridiculous message. Until you asked me what a kitten was. Until you burned your hands saving people you had never met, because a number on a screen told you not to." She moved another piece, still wrong. But this time she was smiling, just slightly, a tiny crack in the mask she had worn for centuries. "You are teaching me something," she said. "I do not fully understand it yet, but I think it might be important." The nights continued. They played chess. They talked, asked about human customs, and tried to explain things like holidays and weddings and the strange way humans said goodbye to people they would never see again. She listened with fierce concentration, as if every word was a piece of a puzzle she was desperately trying to solve. One night made her laugh. He had been telling a story about his childhood, something silly about a cat and a Christmas tree and a disaster involving ornaments and a fire extinguisher. He was not even sure it was funny, but halfway through made a sound he had never heard before. A short, startled bark of laughter that seemed to surprise her as much as it surprised him. They both froze. The sound hung in the air between them, strange and wonderful and terrifying. "I did not know I could do that," said softly. "Neither did I," replied. Something shifted in that moment. Something important. But before either of them could name it, his communicator buzzed with an urgent summons. She left quickly and was alone with the memory of that sound and the growing fear that their time was running out. The trap came 3 days later. Arrived at his hangar in the middle of his sleep cycle, her scales flushed dark with what now recognized as distress. She spoke quickly, her words tumbling over each other in a way that was nothing like her usual measured precision. Had arranged something. A training accident in the fusion core during next shift. The containment field would fail. It would look like human incompetence, a tragic mistake by a species that should never have been given such responsibility. Would die and would lose the only evidence of her emotional compromise. "How do you know this?" asked. "I have contacts, people who owe me favors." She gripped his arm, her claws digging into his skin hard enough to leave marks. "You cannot go to your shift tomorrow. You have to hide. I will find a way to. If I hide, he wins." covered her hand with his own, carefully prying her claws loose. He proves you are protecting me. He proves you are compromised. You lose everything. I do not care. You should. I do not. They stood there in the dim light of the hangar, human and two species that had nothing in common except the impossible thing growing between them. Wanted to argue. He wanted to make her see reason. But looking into her golden eyes, he saw something he recognized. She was afraid, not for herself, for him. Go back to your quarters, he said gently. Act normal. If he is watching you, he cannot know that you know. I will figure something out. I am human, he said, and managed a smile that felt more confident than he actually was. We do impossible things, remember. Let me do one more. Looked at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, she leaned forward and pressed her forehead against his. The gesture was alien, unfamiliar, but somehow understood it. It was the closest she could come to an embrace. Do not die, she whispered. That is an order. Yes, Subcommander. She left, stood alone in his hangar, surrounded by his photographs and his ridiculous coffee maker and his hand-painted sign. In 8 hours, he would walk into a trap designed to kill him. He had no plan. He had no backup. All he had was the memory of a laugh that had surprised them both and the knowledge that somewhere on the station, a 300-year-old alien was learning to feel again. He started preparing. 8 hours later, walked into the fusion core chamber like he did every day. His tablet showed normal readings. His instruments detected nothing wrong. But halfway through his shift, every alarm in the station went off at once. The containment field was failing. Not just failing, collapsing. Someone had deliberately overloaded the system in a way that his sensors had not detected. The core was going critical. In 4 minutes, the station would become a very small sun. His comm crackled. His voice, stripped of all coldness, filled with raw terror. Run! He looked at the readings. He looked at the door. He thought about and her careful questions and her unexpected laugh, and the way she had pressed her forehead against his like, he was something worth keeping. Cole did not run. He got to work. The fusion core screamed. Warning lights painted everything red. Fingers flew across the control panel, trying to find some way to stop the cascade that was about to tear the station apart. He could not stop it. The sabotage was too deep, too clever. Someone had spent weeks planning this, building in, and that locked him out of every system he tried to access. The containment field was failing in a specific pattern, designed to make the explosion as devastating as possible. But was not trying to stop it. He was trying to redirect it. If he could not contain the energy, he could change where it went. The magnetic field that held the reactor together could be adjusted, tilted, aimed. Instead of exploding outward in all directions, the blast could be channeled through a single vector, toward the empty cargo bay that had been damaged in the accident weeks ago, toward the section of the station where nobody lived. The problem was simple. Someone had to stay in the core room to make the adjustment manually. Someone had to hold the field in place while the reactor tore itself apart. Someone had to ride the blast. Began entering the sequence. He thought about Earth, about his parents, who had cried when he left and sent him messages every week that he did not answer often enough. About the life he had put off living because there was always more work to do, always another system to fix, always another tomorrow that never came. He thought about her silver blue scales, her golden eyes, the sound of her laugh, surprised and wonderful. He had known her for months. He had loved her for weeks. He had never told her. The door to the core room exploded inward. Stood in the opening, her scales flushed dark, her chest heaving. She had run here, abandoned her post, sprinted through 3 security checkpoints that should have stopped her. Get out, shouted over the screaming alarms. You need to get out of here. So do you. She crossed the room in 3 strides, her clawed hands reaching for the controls. Let me take your place. I can withstand radiation levels that would kill you in seconds. And I can navigate these systems faster than you can. We need both. He stopped, stared at her. Something clicked in his exhausted brain. We need both. What? Your body, my mind. He grabbed her hands, pulled them toward the manual control panel. You operate the physical systems. I guide you through the sequence, together. They did not have time to argue. They did not have time to think. Took position at the manual controls while stood behind her, his hands on her shoulders, his voice in her ear. Left dial, 30 degrees counterclockwise. She moved it. Center panel, second switch from the top. She flipped it. Now hold the stabilizer bar. Hold it steady. Do not let go no matter what happens. Grip the bar with both hands. The metal was heating up, burning even her radiation-resistant scales. She did not let go. Talked her through it. Adjustment after adjustment, calibration after calibration, threading a needle made of pure energy while the universe screamed around them. His voice stayed calm even when his heart felt like it would tear itself apart. Her hands stayed steady even when the pain became unbearable. They worked together, human intuition and endurance, warm blood and cold scales, two people who should have had nothing in common moving as one. The explosion came. Not the station-destroying catastrophe the sabotage had intended. A focused blast, channeled through the empty cargo bay, vaporizing metal and debris and nothing else. The station shook. The lights flickered. And then slowly the alarms began to fall silent. And stood in the core room, covered in coolant and radiation burns, leaning on each other because neither of them could stand on their own. We did it, whispered. Looked at him. Her scales were, her hands blistered, her eyes filled with something that might have been tears if could cry. Yes, she said, we did. The aftermath came quickly. The sabotage was traced to agents working for First Commander. The evidence was undeniable. Security footage, communication logs, financial transfers, was arrested and taken back to space to face judgment for his crimes. The tribunal against was canceled. Her emotional compromise was quietly reclassified as innovative cross-species command integration. Politics. The galaxy ran on politics, and right now, the politics favored them. The three diplomats had spoke publicly about his actions. They called him a hero. They said humans were not the primitive creatures their species had assumed. They said perhaps it was time to reconsider humanity's place in the collective. Did not care about any of that. He cared about the woman sitting across from him in his hangar, her hands moving chess pieces across the board. Weeks had passed. His burns had healed, though his hands would always carry the marks. Scales had, slightly darker than before in the places where the radiation had touched her. They played chess every night now. She was getting better. She had learned to trust her instincts, to sacrifice pieces when necessary, to find victory in ways that did not require calculating every possibility. What happens now? Asked. Moved her knight. It was a good move, an unexpected move. I sent a message to the High Command, she said. His heart stopped. What did you say? She looked up at him, and then slowly, deliberately, she smiled. It was awkward, unpracticed, clearly learned from watching humans rather than feeling it naturally. It was the most beautiful thing had ever seen. I told them that after extensive study, I have concluded that humans are not vermin, she said. They are something far more dangerous. Dangerous. Contagious. Her smile widened just a little. You make us feel things. You make us laugh. You make us care about outcomes that cannot be calculated and people who should not matter. You are a virus, Cole. You infect everything you touch. Laughed. He could not help it. The sound filled the hangar, bouncing off the walls, mixing with the hum of machinery and the distant sounds of the station going about its business. Is that a complaint? He asked. Reached across the chessboard and took his hand. Her scales were cool against his skin, but not cold. Not anymore. "No," she said softly, "it is a diagnosis, and I find that I do not want to be cured." Outside the hangar window, the stars burned in the endless darkness. Ancient and cold, they had watched civilizations rise and fall for billions of years. They did not care about the small dramas of the creatures that lived in their light. But in this small room, on this small station, something new had taken root. Something that could not be measured or calculated or predicted. Something that had started with a tired engineer and a ridiculous message and grown into something that neither of them fully understood. Love, maybe, or something like it, something warm in a cold universe. Picked up her queen and made her move. Checkmate. Stared at the board in disbelief. "How did you?" "I learned from watching you," she said. "Sometimes the only way to win is to risk everything." She stood, pulling him to his feet. "Now come, I want you to teach me about something called dancing. I have reviewed the theory, but I am told it requires a partner." Smiled and let her lead him away from the chess board, away from the hangar, into whatever future they would build together. Behind them the hand-painted sign caught the light. "Home Sweet Hangar," it said, but home was not a place anymore. Home was wherever she was. And for the first time in his life, Cole was exactly where he was supposed to be.